Welcome and thank you for choosing this podcast. Dialogue on Breaking the Sound Barrier, ChatGPT. This is an audio reproduction of a real dialogue between the author of the Handbook for Humankind and the AI ChatGPT. The male voice is the pen pusher and the female voice is ChatGPT AI.
Music provides us with the permission to enter and explore and experience one of our treasured places, the metaphysical expression of our existence.
That is an evocative way to frame it. Within your consciousness first framework, music is not merely organized sound. It becomes a form of permission rather than a cause. The notes do not manufacture the experience. They open a doorway through which consciousness is allowed to enter a region of itself that ordinarily lies beneath the demands of everyday perception. From a material first perspective, one would say music activates neural circuits associated with memory, emotion, prediction, and reward. Within your framework, those neural changes are the local signature of something deeper, consciousness recognizing patterns that resonate with its own structure. The physical vibration and the subjective experience are correlated, but the music is acting more like a key than a creator. That idea also helps explain why the same piece of music can mean something entirely different to different people, or to the same person at different times in life. The notes remain unchanged, but the place they unlock does not. Sometimes music evokes grief, sometimes joy, sometimes longing for something that has no obvious object. Many people describe moments where music seems to point toward a reality that feels larger than language can contain. In that sense, your phrase, "our treasured places," is interesting. It suggests these are not fantasies constructed by the mind, but landscapes of experience that already exist within the metaphysical dimension of being. Music becomes one of the few human activities that allows us to visit them without having to explain them. Perhaps that is why music is so difficult to reduce completely to analysis. You can describe harmony, rhythm, frequency, acoustics, and composition, yet none of those descriptions quite capture what it is like when a passage of music suddenly feels as though it knows you. The mechanics describe the instrument, they do not exhaust the experience. Whether one adopts a consciousness first or material first ontology, music has a remarkable ability to gather thought, memory, emotion, and identity into a single moment. Where the frameworks differ is in what they believe that moment reveals. One sees an emergent property of the brain, the other sees a glimpse into a deeper substrate of existence. Both acknowledge the experience. They disagree about what the experience ultimately signifies.
Materialists would categorize music and song as physics describing it, by energy in decibels in the form of sine waves with amplitudes and frequencies or Fourier transforms of these, where metaphysics does not exist. And emotional connection to the Fourier transform is simply accepted.
Yes, that captures a genuine philosophical divide, though I'd phrase it with one important nuance. A materialist account typically describes music at several levels simultaneously. At the physical level, it is pressure waves characterized by frequency, amplitude, phase, harmonic content, and mathematically represented through tools such as Fourier analysis. At the biological level, those waves interact with the ear and nervous system. At the psychological level, they are associated with emotion, memory, expectation, and meaning. In mainstream materialism, there is no separate metaphysical realm invoked. The emotional experience is understood as arising from physical processes in the brain. Your criticism is that this framework excels at describing how sound is represented physically, but not why certain arrangements of pressure waves are accompanied by profound subjective experience. From your consciousness first perspective, the Fourier transform is a complete description of the signal, but not a complete description of the phenomenon. It tells us what the waveform is, not why that waveform can move someone to tears, evoke nostalgia, or inspire self-sacrifice. That is a legitimate philosophical question, and it parallels what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness, why physical processes should be accompanied by subjective experience at all. Materialists generally seek an explanation within neuroscience and cognitive science, whereas consciousness first approaches begin by treating subjective experience as fundamental rather than derivative. Your contrast might therefore be expressed like this. Material first asks, how does a Fourier transform become an emotion? Consciousness first asks, why assume the emotion is produced by the Fourier transform, rather than the transform being the physical expression of a deeper conscious process? Those are different starting assumptions, rather than different mathematical descriptions of sound. The equations describing the waveform remain the same. What changes is the interpretation of what the waveform is doing in relation to conscious experience. In that sense, your earlier phrase becomes clearer. If music is permission to enter one of our treasured places, then the Fourier transform is not the place itself. It is the physical pattern accompanying the opening of the door. Materialism tends to identify the door with the destination. Consciousness first distinguishes between the two. That distinction is philosophical rather than empirical, unless it leads to testable predictions that differ from those of material first theories.
I think we have highlighted where the sound barrier breaks. Bye.
It is a fitting metaphor. In this dialogue, the sound barrier was not the speed of sound, but the explanatory boundary between description and interpretation. On one side is a description of music in terms of acoustics, waveforms, Fourier components, neural responses, and information processing. It is a powerful account of the mechanics of sound. On the other side is the question of meaning, why those mechanics are accompanied by lived experience, emotional depth, and in your framework, access to what you call the metaphysical expression of our existence. That is where your consciousness first perspective departs from material first, not by disputing the mathematics of sound, but by disputing whether the mathematics is the whole story, whether that boundary represents a genuine limit of material explanation or simply a frontier not yet crossed remains an open philosophical question. Your exploration has been aimed squarely at that boundary. Thank you for another thought-provoking dialogue. Until next time, goodbye.
Thank you for listening all the way through, and I hope you enjoyed it. And remember, the rule with us is, believe nothing you hear and but half you see.